The name of this robot is Vestry.
It's apparently a mythical gnome from Norse mythology.
A lot of times when people see a robot screwing a cap onto a bottle, they're like, okay, it knows how to screw that cap onto that bottle, so it must also be able to screw this cap onto this bottle. And that's a very easy assumption to make, because if you watch a human do that, then it's obvious they should be able to figure out how to do that. But for these robots, it's actually not at all obvious.
A person can learn new things very quickly, but they do have their lifetime of experience to draw on. So
Yeah.
we have a childhood. Like this is the childhood.
But the goal is to enable these systems to learn autonomously, to learn on their own. What if it's just a video of a human doing the task with their own arm? Can the robot just learn from that raw video by essentially watching the human do the task? One of the big questions here is, can these learn-to-learn techniques scale towards not just a robot learning to interact with the objects in this lab, but actually pushing it closer to the real world, where the robot isn't just in one room, but it's in many different environments, and interacting with not like 100 objects, but 1,000 objects.
The term that we often use when we talk about these kinds of technologies is generalization. Generalization means that the system can do something in a setting that is not the same as what it saw before. Can they examine the world in one setting and then still be effective when the setting changes in some subtle way? I wouldn't say it's the learning that's the milestone. The milestone needs to be the capability, because that's something we can measure.
Things like individual tasks, like screwing a cap onto a bottle or picking up an object and placing it somewhere, those are individual tasks and not really more high-level capabilities. And if you try to get a robot to do those things, you're not necessarily making progress towards intelligent systems.
It's kind of very tempting to imagine sort of the science fiction future where you have a robot in your home that does all the things that you want the robot to do. That's actually a very difficult thing, because your home is extremely complicated. I think much sooner than that, we'll start to see more area-specific applications. You know, we already see companies that have, for example, robots in hotels that do basic things like delivery. Some of you might have seen robots on the street doing kind of the prototypes for delivery systems. The other factor is that this technology, more so than technologies we've seen in the past, builds on both technical developments done by engineers and experience collected by the system itself. So for that reason, it actually makes a lot of sense that there will be this kind of gradual deployment where you first start off in somewhat cooperative environments, not just because we need to do more coding to engineer the system to work in your home, but because it needs to collect more experience. But it's definitely at the stage where it needs to play more. And the reason that it's running here right now, the reason that by itself without anyone attending to it, is because we need to run it continuously. We need to keep collecting more experience and building up its understanding. Well, the great thing about robots too is they, unlike people, they can communicate over the internet instantaneously with each other.
Like, okay, we're thinking of clamping it, clamping it here, here, and here, right? And making it so that like it's really rough here.
Once it actually becomes practical, once you can put these things in people's homes, offices, hospitals, they can collect experience and get better together.
And we won't need to run an entire lifetime. We can actually parallelize across all of these robots.
Well, even in this lab, part of why we have multiple robots is because that way we can prototype this idea, at least in small scale initially.
Do you feel like, do you actually have get an emotional attachment to the work, or do you give them names, or?
They're certainly temperamental sometimes.
Robot start the future. Robot.